You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's case is the unsolved case of Rhonda Annette Hinson. Was this an accident or a murder or something far darker than anyone could have ever imagined? Nothing seems to add up here, and we still don't have any idea why this poor girl had to die. By the way, I post so much true crime content like this, telling the victims' stories, so if you do enjoy hearing them, then please subscribe down below. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 1981 in North Carolina, and Rhonda Annette Hinson was a 19-year-old young woman born December 13th of 1962. Everyone would describe her as a complete ray of sunshine. Parents' names were Bobby and June Hinson, and she had a brother named Robert. Rhonda had just graduated from a high school in Valdez, North Carolina, and then she went on to be a clerical worker at the Hickory Steel Company. But on December 22nd of 1981, this Hickory Steel Company would host their Christmas party at the American Legion hut, and every one of the workers was invited, and so Rhonda did go with some of her friends who were also co-workers. But they decided to go ahead and leave the party early and head home. This was around midnight, and there were conflicting statements saying that either Rhonda drove her friends home at this point or went to her friend's house to pick up her car to drive home, but either way was headed towards her house at around 12:30. Her car was a beige Datsun D12 two-door, but it would never make it to her driveway. You see, she lived with her parents, and at 1 a.m. that morning, about 30 minutes after she was said to head home, her mom would wake up from being sound asleep because she had had a premonition that her daughter had been in an accident. Rhonda's father then woke up, turned on the scanner, and they both heard a parent's worst nightmare. Their daughter had been in an accident, and it was fatal. You see, when Rhonda had left her friend's house, she had gone west on Interstate 40 and then exited off the 350 off-ramp. At this point, she turned right onto the Mineral Springs Mountain Road, and then she went up a steep hill. But that was where she would be shot to death. She was just a mile from her home when a high-powered rifle would go through her vehicle into her. When her car was found, it would have the driver's door open with the window rolled down, and Rhonda would be laying outside with her hands placed to her sides as though somebody deliberately placed them there. There was one single bullet that had been shot at her car that went through the trunk, through the back of her seat, and then pierced her lung and her heart. One single bullet had killed her. Rhonda's car was actually still running and had driven almost backwards, or rolled backwards, across the other lane of the highway and into the ditch on the other side. Now, investigators at first thought this was some sort of freak accident or possibly just a random act of violence, but I think the position her body was found in should have told them that there was a little more to this story. A witness then came forward saying that around 12:15, 12:30, they had passed by that same road that Rhonda was found on, and under the interstate, right next to the off-ramp where Rhonda would have taken, they had seen a car. It was a blue GM Chevrolet, and there was two white males inside. Another witness then came forward stating that they had gone by at around this time that the murder would have happened and saw a similar car to the other witness's statement speeding away from the crime scene, and there was only one male inside. And when they got closer to Rhonda's car, they saw that there was a woman kind of slumped over in the front seat, but a male was outside of her driver's side window and kind of looking in on her. The witness kind of just thought that they were a drunk couple and headed on, but seeing that that wasn't true, this witness agreed to go under hypnosis to see if there was any more information that they could remember, and they remembered so much more. They found that the car leaving the scene was a blue Chevelle, which was a 70s model with a messed up front, and it also had a gray primer. And also the man that they had seen was between 5'10" and 6 foot with a medium build and dark brown hair. And then this witness described another car that was actually at the crime scene that was either a black or a dark blue Trans Am. This was all they really knew at this point. Rhonda did have a boyfriend, and this boyfriend told a newspaper that he didn't want her going to the party this night, but never really specified why. There were also kind of some rumors that she had called him that night, but I don't think that that was ever confirmed. And so there really was very little information on what had happened, who could have done this. Fingerprints were found on Rhonda's side door that investigators believed belonged to the killer, but when they tried to put it in the database to match it to someone, no one was ever found as a match. By January 8th of 1982, the governor was actually offering a $5,000 reward, and so was the city of Valdez. And they were all just really trying to get information to solve this case. Hundreds of persons were interviewed and polygraphed, and even psychics were brought in to help, but none of this did really anything in this case. But years later, with DNA profiling, the investigators of this case realized that they had something huge. They had Rhonda's sweater that had been preserved from that night, and it had DNA evidence in the armpits, which didn't belong to Rhonda. They put this in the database, they tried to match it, but once again was a letdown. But some people believed that this wouldn't even point them to the killer, that possibly someone had seen her slumped over, this possibly male who was looking over her had seen her slumped over and tried to help and tried to pull her out of the car, and once he realized, or this person realized, that Rhonda was too far gone, kind of put her hands at her side respectfully and left, so he wasn't implicated in this murder. The reward is now up to $20,000, and one of the biggest theories is that Rhonda actually knew her killer, because in the weeks leading up to her murder, she was acting very strange. She was appearing paranoid and was suffering from insomnia. She was normally super comfortable driving around alone, but every time she would go into the city, she would then beg her father to go with her. And during one of these trips, she actually told her father that she had something to tell him, and it was bad. But she never ended up really telling him. But she did tell her mother something, and that was that she asked her mother if being in a relationship with a married man was ever okay. Rhonda was also suffering from insomnia, like I said, but she was getting up in the middle of the night and taking showers and telling her mom that she was doing this because she felt dirty. And investigators have said that this can be a sign of sexual abuse when somebody just feels really dirty all the time. I mean, could this have been a premeditated murder by the married man she was seeing at the time? It almost makes me wonder if this man was possibly one of her dad's friends who was married, because the way she told her father that it was bad makes me think that maybe it had a connection to her father. Maybe Rhonda threatened to tell this man's wife or her parents, and that's why she was killed, because this man didn't want that getting out. Maybe she was pregnant with his child. I mean, this could be a real reason why Rhonda felt so dirty if she wasn't being sexually abused, because I don't want to undermine that whatsoever. But if it was something different, it could be the fact that she felt so much guilt and almost like resentment toward herself from being in a relationship with an older married man that was turning sexual. I mean, was this married man's wife aware of the relationship, and did she hire a hitman to go after Rhonda? I mean, perhaps it really was sexual assault or abuse. Maybe it was a co-worker. Something that really stood out to me was that she had just really started her job at this company and was possibly one of the workers there kind of obsessed with her and would do things that were highly inappropriate. Maybe she rejected him or told him no, told him off, told somebody about it, and he didn't like that and took her life. Or more theories I've seen say maybe it was her boyfriend who she allegedly called that night so he would know where she was. Maybe he knew about the affair she was having with a married man and was jealous of that. There are so many different theories, but none of them can even really be confirmed or denied because there's not a ton of information that has ever been released. And one of the theories that I at first was like, there's no way that that's it, I've kind of come around to, and that was the fact that it could have been an accident. And like I said at first, I was like, no, there's no way. It seemed like this was a target on Rhonda. But there was a case that was a lot like this, and it happened in 1967 to a woman named Nancy McGowan. And she was driving along the highway when she all of a sudden started kind of veering off the road, and a police officer who was behind her pulled over and found her slumped over, shot dead. She had a small gunshot wound to the side of her head and died at the hospital. And one of her windows was actually open, and they realized that this had been a fatal accident. See, around where they were people who would shoot their guns and hunt and just do stupid things in the woods. And after a whole bunch of searching, they found that there was this man who was out on his boat that day who was shooting at beer cans. And one of his bullets actually ricocheted off the water and went straight into her car, killing her. It was just a freak accident that seems like that could be impossible, that could happen, but it did. And that made me think, could this have been the same thing? Could it have been a hunter out in the woods that night that she possibly scared when she came down the road? Or kids playing around when they shouldn't have, and then they were too scared to ever come forward? The only thing that I really think with this is that I just can't get over how precise the actual bullet was. I mean, to go through a trunk of a car and to hit a woman enough to kill her with just one shot is insane. And I mean, that could be taken either way. It could be taken as, oh my god, freak accident that was a 1 in a million chance of happening, or it could be that whoever shot that was extremely accurate and probably being paid as a job to do that. I don't know, you could take it either way. Or was this a case of mistaken identity, and that one gunshot wound did mean a hitman, but it wasn't even for her, and she was just, unfortunately, in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's also a theory, because her window was rolled down at the scene, that she had possibly pulled over for somebody she knew or somebody that wanted to get her attention. She rolled down her window and then something had happened, but that is kind of weird. Why would she pull over and then somebody else would be there to shoot the back of her trunk? I think if she had pulled over, they would have just shot her right there if they were going to do so, rather than shooting it through her trunk, through the seat, and hoping that it hit her. But I mean, I guess that is a possibility. It could have been a distraction of some sort. Who knows? But it is odd that her window was rolled down. I mean, maybe she saw the person who was in the car behind her and knew them, or was kind of like yelling at them or talking to them through the window before they killed her. Really, this one is heartbreaking because I feel like somebody was very much responsible for this and got away with it. I mean, police, I think, have done a really good job at trying their hardest, but with so little to go on, it was almost like this person did it and then vanished. Part about her hands at her sides is what really freaks me out, I think, because that is not something a hitman would do, go and place her body out so nicely. And I also think if it was just a good Samaritan, wouldn't they come forward saying, yeah, I placed her body like that, but I don't know what happened. I guess since there isn't anybody to blame, they could have been blamed, and maybe they knew that. But also, wouldn't they want to help in the investigation in any way possible? This one is so frustrating, and I hope you guys are just as frustrated as I am and can leave me your theories or thoughts down below, because I seriously would love any help that I can get on figuring out what in the world happened to this poor girl, because I can't even imagine how her family feels. So I will leave you with that. But if you do have any information in this case, contact the Burke County Sheriff's Office at 828-438-5506 or Crime Stoppers at 828-437-3333. And don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay. Bye.